Golf News RI presents the Golf Dudes Podcast. Here are the dudes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Golf Dudes Podcast. I'm Joe Calabro. Hope everyone's having a great Thursday, and thanks to everyone for obviously tuning in. A couple of things to get to. I know you're all tuning in for the Mike Hamilton interview, and that's coming up in just a few minutes. But a couple of things first. Well, the first thing we should tell you is that the Golf Dudes Podcast is brought to you by Lynx Drinks. Lynx Drinks is best known for a transfusion in a can. Now, Lynx Drinks currently has 3 different versions of transfusions. They have one with orange juice, grape juice, and cranberry juice. Obviously, the grape juice one is your regular transfusion. I personally like the orange juice one the best, but whatever you like, check out Lynx Drinks at liquor stores and country clubs or golf courses near you. They're in about 20 golf courses in Rhode Island. So thanks to Lynx Drinks for their support. So a couple of things before I get to the Mike Hamilton interview, which I know you're all excited for. I know we put that clip out yesterday that is going somewhat viral-ish, kind of. Anyway, a couple of things. Congrats to all the players who have been named Players of the Year thus far. Obviously, it's Thursday, and this morning, the Rhode Island Golf Association announced that Kylie Eaton was named the Girls' Junior Player of the Year. She also finished second in the Women's Player of the Year. Obviously, Mike was named Men's Player of the Year. Lisa McGill was named Women's Player of the Year after making it to the U.S. Senior Open and the British Amateur or the British Senior Amateur. So, congrats to her. And then obviously Max Jackson was named the Boys Junior Player of the Year. So both Kylie and Max have won the Junior Player of the Year award 2 years in a row. So they look to have that thing locked up. It would seem. So congrats to everybody who's won the award so far. I know Darren Carenti, who we had on our podcast a few weeks ago, he's going to be named the Senior Player of the Year for the 3rd time. So congrats in advance to him. Again, we had him on our podcast, so go check out that interview. It was actually a really good interview, and I didn't do enough social with it, as much social with it as I would have liked to do, just because at that time that was the trig stuff going on and all kinds of stuff. So perhaps we'll do some more with it when he's officially named. Will give us an opportunity to do some more social media and clips with it and post with it. So anyway, congrats to everyone, and congrats to everybody else that's going to be named Player of the Year as well. So it was really exciting stuff. Good. So that's the first thing. Second thing, a couple of housekeeping items, if you will. Thanks to everybody who continues to do the survey. We're over 200 200 participants. So that's really exciting. Some really good data, and we're actually working on how to roll it out in a format that's innovative, interesting to you all, and also interesting to us. So we are working on that. So expect that in December sometime. So really good stuff, and we'll probably put it out one more time or promote the survey at least one more time before we do anything with it, just for the heck of it, as we continue to build our following and new people coming on. So thanks everybody for doing that. Again, we are currently working on ideas and ways to bring you the data, again, a way that's innovative, interesting, and easy to understand. So not that the data is so super complicated, but so there's that. Thanks to everyone for watching Fit for Golf episode 2. Really a fun series with Michael Edwards. We are in the process of setting a taping date for episode 3. So that'll be coming in December. So thanks to everyone for watching both of those episodes so far. And it's been really interesting, and it's been really cool. It's something that I've always wanted to do, not necessarily with fitness, but just in general, kind of a documentary series type of thing. So thanks everyone for watching that, and obviously you can find those videos on our website and social media and things of that nature. So thanks for everybody on that. The other thing, with Black Friday coming around soon, just a week away about. We have, I'm sure you all saw it, Pinned. Our friends at Pinned Golf is doing a special holiday sale or holiday deal, if you will. If you use our discount code, which is GolfNewsRI, pretty simple. I don't think that caps matter. I know it's written in caps on the graphic that we created, but I don't actually think caps matter. So either way, the discount code is GolfNewsRI, and you will receive 20% off any product that you purchase, whether it's a rangefinder or a pinned hat. They have some cool merch that they are continuing to build out. So thanks to our friends at Pin for that holiday deal, and hopefully you guys can get some good shopping out of it. Christmas is right around the corner. You need that holiday shopping. Buy your friend a new rangefinder, or buy your dad a new rangefinder, or whatever it might be. So there's that. So we'll continue to promote that as well. Again, discount code GolfNewsRI, and we'll also have our own discount code coming up for the week of Black Friday for our pro shop. If you need a sweatshirt or a t-shirt or whatever else, you'll be able to there'll be a discount code for that coming up. That'll be announced probably early next week. So that's what we have. Again, I wanted to hit a couple of quick housekeeping items there. There is that. So we're following, of course, is Will Dixon playing in the G Pro Tour event. Is his last event of the year, and he's currently inside the cut line as we tape this podcast. So he's grinding. So there's that. So without further ado, I know you're all tuning in for the Hamilton interview, and let's get to it. Just to talk to Mike Hamilton, a friend of the program. And it was a really good interview. Obviously, the story that he told with Kevin Blazer is amazing. But the whole interview was really exciting. It was really good. He gives some great insight, and I think you all enjoy it. One note that I screwed up on, I mentioned, talking about Kevin Blazer, I mentioned that he won the New Hampshire Amateur or whatever I said. Obviously, that's wrong. He won the Cape Cod Amateur, not the New Hampshire Amateur. I don't know why I said New Hampshire. I couldn't think of what I was trying to say at the time, and of course, I was on the spot. But he won the Cape Cod Amateur, not the New Hampshire Amateur. So just keep that in mind. But that's it. Hope you enjoy the interview. It's really good. I think it's really good anyway. So enjoy it. And here's Hammy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Golf Dudes podcast. Joe Calabro here, and I'm delighted to be joined by friends of the program and now the Rhode Island Men's Player of the Year, Mike Hamilton. Mike, thanks for coming on the show again. I know this is at least your third appearance, if not more, but thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
All right, Men's Player of the Year. You've had a tremendous season. Obviously, we'll go through some of the wins and the highs and the lows, mostly the highs. But just what does that mean to you? How exciting was it to, officially be named the Men's Player of the Year? I know the season's been over for a while and you kind of known about it. But what does it mean to officially kind of be named Men's Player of the Year in the state?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a cool honor. Not something I thought that was attainable, to be honest with you, at least not until maybe a year or two ago. So when you look up at the names that have won it before, guys like Bobby Leopold, Brad Valois, Charlie Blanchard. I mean, you go all the way back into, not sure I think maybe Andrade won one. You see all the Quigley names up there. It's pretty cool to even be listed in that category. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah, definitely really, really cool.
You had obviously a great year. I do believe did I beat you in the hole-in-one category? I think I beat you in the hole-in-one category.
You definitely did do that. Yes.
Yes. All right. I got one win. You swept the rest of the category, so congrats. I'll try to be more competitive next year. But at least beating something. This season, from kind of start to finish, you've been playing really well, pretty dominant. What went into that? Did you change your preparation? Was there some sort of specific focus going into the year that kind of helped you?
Yeah, I mean, the big turning point, honestly, was probably the Northeast last year, and just understanding, so much goes into, tournaments and the results, but in reality, so much of it has to do with the process itself and focusing on what actually gets you prepared. And then when you're actually playing the tournaments, the process, worrying about the process more than the results. It's something that, me and Bob Walsh have talked about over the years, from his, coaching abilities in basketball, talking with guys like Tom McCormick, who's had a ton of success in his perspective of the game as well. And when I started to focus less on the result and more on the process itself, things started to change. I think at the Northeast, it was all about the result. It was how not to shoot 80 something, or, how not to hit a ball out of bounds, or how not to finish in last place, instead of thinking about the process that, got you there in the first place. So, after the Northeast, the first 2 rounds last year were disappointing. The third round was actually pretty decent. I took that momentum and kind of wrote it out through last year. Didn't get the exact results I wanted last year, but, still had a pretty good year. I mean, I kind of think that a successful year is making the tri-state team. I think that's a pretty cool accomplishment. So, easily made that. But then coming into this year, the focus was purely on the process and doing the things in between, tournaments and how I practice. That was another big change. I went from being a ball beater to more of a focused practicer, meaning if I'm only going to spend 45 minutes on the range, I'm going to focus on doing the right things versus just spending 45 minutes on the range. Same thing with putting green, chipping, anything that went into it, course preparation, stuff like that. So that was the big change, and it kind of paid off. I'm hoping that trend continues into next year too.
Yeah, and hopefully next year, as we talked about before we started recording, if you will, you'll hopefully be back in the Northeast Amateur next year with the RI Men's Player of the Year award. And I know you said they took the stroke play out, but hopefully that should get you in, at least in theory. So I guess just to hit on that real quick, assuming that you are in and all indications are that you should be in, what will you change in next year's Northeast Amateur that obviously you didn't know before, because obviously you've never done it? But what will your attitude change? Will there be less nerves if that's possible? What will you change going into next year's Northeast Amateur? Because obviously it's a huge deal for a rider to play, a huge deal for you to play. But what will be different? Will you change anything?
Yeah, there'll be a ton of things I'll change. I mean, the problem was going into the Northeast, and probably similar to other national events that I've played in, is I focus so much on the result, like I was talking about earlier, and not the process itself. And beyond that, it was just trying to go into the Northeast. I felt like I needed everything to be perfect. My putting stroke needed to be perfect. I needed to feel like my distances were perfect. Everything felt like it needed to be dialed in. And in reality, even if that is the case, you're going to run into, bumps along the way in a round and in the entire tournament. And instead of reacting to them like I did last year, which was panic, it needs to be, accept the results that come along with the approach that I took, and not, sway away from it because of one or two bad shots. I've been lucky enough to play in a, good amount of national events, but I haven't had success at that level. I'm not afraid to admit that, but I don't think it's because of talent. I mean, I'm, able to compete with guys around here that have had success at the national level, guys like Brad Valoy and Bobby Leopold and some of these other guys. So it's not that I can't do it, but the mental approach needs to be different. So I'm looking forward to hopefully playing some events in the lead up to the Northeast Am at the national level, and then also at in the Northeast, and taking that approach and seeing if, that does work. Because, I'm not going to lie, I got a little overwhelmed in the Northeast, and it wasn't necessarily nerves. It was more anxiety, the anxiousness of the pace of everything just sped up when things started to go wrong. And, unfortunately I didn't handle it very well, but I learned a lot from it. And when those types of situations came up in this season, maybe they weren't national events, but the experience I gained there helped. So going to the Northeast, that's what I want to take into next year, is that kind of different mental approach.
Yeah, it should be really obviously one of the great events of the summer. Certainly one of my favorite things to cover, the Northeast Amateur. So it'll be really cool to have you in it and have other advantages in it as well. So looking forward to that. But bringing it back to this year, the RI Amateur was kind of where it kind of obviously is the big event of the year, but that's really kind of where you first kind of made that big run through the two stroke play rounds are brutal, right? With the wind. That was like, I mean, I was just walking with you guys and it was miserable.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
then
especially the second day.
Yeah, the second day, the first day here wasn't great either, but especially the second day was brutal. The cut was a crazy number, which I guess isn't the highest number cut the RI amateurs ever had, but who knew? I felt like it was. And then you made that epic run through the matches. I forgot who you beat in the first match, but you and Max Jackson had an epic match that ended on 18, and obviously we all know Max is coming quick. And then you and Jansen Vargas had a great match in the semifinal. It was annoying that half-hour rain delay that we had or whatever, but and then obviously you get to the final, an epic match against Kevin Blazer. Obviously didn't end the way we wanted it to. But a couple things on the amateur, just what was that run like? What did you learn from that run, and just that whole experience? Like, what was your biggest takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the kind of turning point in terms of knowing that like my new process and new, kind of mindset was working, because like you said, after day one, I didn't play great the first day, and I knew the second day the wind was going to be insane. So I don't really consider myself a great wind player. I hit the ball kind of high. I struggle with flighting the golf ball. So I was worried, to be honest, that things could get away, and they actually got away a little early. I think I might have been 4 over through 6. I doubled 6. I started on 1 the second day, and I got a little bit concerned, but that's really when I kicked it into gear. And like I said, the approach to the game being a little bit different. And the key to the AM, now that I've been that far, is you have to stay patient the entire time. You can't look ahead. I know it's cliche, but it truly is that way. I mean, I handled the first 2 matches decently well, but when I got to the quarters against Max, I probably should have lost that match, but it was the ability to stay in the moment that helped. I mean, I was 1 down on 15. I chipped in from about 35 yards to make bogey, just to then go on to win 16 and 18. I mean, you go in your mind, whether you're willing to admit it or not, you go, well, it's another run in the quarterfinals that you lose, right? And instead you end up in the finals on the 36th hole. So that mindset in trying to stay in the moment is important, because things can flip really, really quick. And as long as that week it's physically, it's not that bad. It's mentally. I mean, your mind is continuously working the entire time. I mean, 36 holes a day is a lot. And the pressure kind of mounts as you go through the tournament. So that was really a big key. And the other thing too that it taught me was, I played really, really well that week, but it wasn't until a few weeks later where I really played my best golf. I mean, I played really well at Wanamatonamy. I did what I needed to do, but it never felt like I had my best stuff. And, against Kevin, there was definitely some stretches where I felt like I did, but it wasn't until a couple weeks later where it really kind of clicked. And that's when, now I can really lean on those past experiences, hopefully, going forward too.
Yeah. And we'll get to the stroke play in a minute. Obviously, that's what you're talking about. But back to the amateur, obviously you're 3 down with 4 to go against Kevin. It looks like to be honest, it looks like it's kind of over. I'm sure everyone kind of thought that. Maybe you even thought that a little bit in the back of your mind, just as a human being. But then you rally, make an epic comeback. Just talk about your mindset at that point. So I think a lot of people, especially, at my level, we're down and out. We're kind of calling it quits. We're heading home at that point, but you got yourself together. You rallied. What is the mindset for you at that point? Because like I said, I think most people probably felt like this thing is kind of over at this point, but you obviously rallied and made an epic, almost completed an epic comeback. So what's the mindset at that point?
So
is it 1 hole at a time?
Yeah, it's funny. So I made on 12, which was what hole, like 30, 30 somewhere.
Yeah, whatever.
Made a horrible double bogey. I mean, the pin on 12 that afternoon was absurd. I mean, for those who didn't follow the tournament, really, really closely, I mean, they were literally rolling the greens between 18s, and it got a little bit crazy that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really started to doubt myself. And then, because I was 2 down now with 6 to go, and then Kevin hit an unbelievable wedge shot on 13 to about a foot for a gimme, down with 5 to go. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm out of this. But at the same time, it is really hard to close out a match. Like, that's the hardest thing to do. When someone expects you to win or someone expects you to finish something, that's when it gets difficult, because that's when the pressure mounts. And I just said, you know what, just keep, again, one shot at a time. And then, was able to get back into it. Obviously lost on 18, but at the same time, like, the process of getting back into that match, I think the credit has to go back to Kevin. Like, Kevin went from 3 up to tied, and then he wins 18. Sure, I made bogey on 18, but that doesn't mean he didn't make par. He had to finish out that match, and that's what he did. He deserves a ton of credit for that. Kevin deserves a bunch of credit in general. I don't think he gets the love he deserves for how good he is. I mean, he's probably one of the best drivers of the golf ball I've ever seen. And everyone sees him. He's a big dude. He looks like he could take you down in the parking lot, which he probably could. But he's actually a great putter. And, you can't expect someone to hand you, a tournament like that. I mean, he went out and he took it. I'm glad I came back. I mean, that definitely showed resiliency, but I mean, the credit goes to Kevin. I mean, he's a really, really good player, and he deserved to win. So.
Yeah, and as I told him, he had a great stretch too. I think he won the New Hampshire Amateur, or whatever it was. Yeah, the New Hampshire Amateur, and then he won the Burke, and then he had obviously won this amateur. One of the defining moments of that match was that putt you hit on 17 to tie that bomb. And everybody got video of. I got video of it just by chance. I know ABC6 had a video of it. You can hear Daphne's father go crazy in the background, which is pretty funny. Where does that rank for you? That putt? Where is that on the Hamilton highlight reel? Is it up there? Is it top 5, top 10 shot of all time for you? Where does that rank for you? Because that's pretty amazing.
It's funny. It's up there, but more of it was relief, because for those following the match, I only had to 2-putt really. Kevin had about 25 feet for par. Now, sure, he could have made that, but in my head, I was thinking, you got to get this close. One of the things about Wanamatanami that's really, really tricky is no matter how many times you play that golf course, putts that look uphill aren't uphill. Putts that look downhill aren't downhill. There's a lot of very subtle breaks, and a lot of it has to do with just the way the greens are placed. The greens they're kind of raised, if you will. It's a typical Seth Rayner design, with those characteristics: square greens, template greens, and a lot of the green surfaces are raised up off of where the front of the green is, or the front of the fairway. So it's something to look at next time you go play there. And what makes it difficult is everything off the edges of the green are deceiving. So you see that bunker on the other side of the green from where I was putting, and it looks like the putt's uphill because the back of the green falls off. In fact, that putt was probably about as flat as you're going to get there. And I whacked it. Luckily, it hit the center of the hole. But, the scary thing was I couldn't enjoy it too much, because in my head, I hadn't really executed the shot I wanted to do. And, that was probably a good and bad thing, because I think, you see it go in, you're like, okay, I know I won the hole. But now your mind's starting to race, like, God, how did I just do that? Like, don't do that again. So it was pretty interesting. It definitely is up there for just the moment itself, but sometimes they say better lucky than good. That was definitely one of those cases.
Well, it was one of the great. It was one of your. Not that I walk every single round with you, but it was one of your great shots. I don't know if it beats the chip in against Andrew O'Leary the year before, but I think it's 2, maybe 3 right under that. I think that chip in is still the best. It's one of the great Kirkbride moments of all time.
Yeah,
I've been at Kirkbride for a while, and I've seen a lot of things. That was one of the top moments ever.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt.
That putt's gonna be up there.
That's definitely at the top of the list. Unfortunately, I need to figure out a way to have these shots actually equal a win. I've made a ton of them. I made a 30-footer on O'Leary the year before to send it to extra holes, chipped in, and then obviously this year what I did on 17. unfortunately, I'm 0-3 in those matches, so I need to figure out how to close them out.
So
Before I start to get
no
yeah.
more big moments. Just keep it.
Yeah.
Put everything tap ins. No more exciting stuff. That's
It'd be
that's
nice.
the new strategy. So obviously tough loss at the amateur, but amazing run. Like I said, you came back. You fought back. You go to the stroke play, pretty dominant performance for the most part. If I remember correctly, you pretty much led wire to wire, or mostly wire to wire, it felt like. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's just from my memory. So the question is, and I'm always fascinated by this, how do you get from a devastating loss in the amateur, right? Heart-wrenching loss in the amateur, to now a dominant performance in the stroke play? How do you get there? How do you get your mind there? Because I feel like a lot of people losing would just put them in a shell. I know it would for me, but I'm not a great player. But how do you get there mentally, physically, whatever it is?
So I wasn't really bummed. I actually wasn't as bummed out after the AM as you would think. I think I was really happy with the run, and I was also really happy for Kevin. I mean, Kevin's a good buddy of mine. I was really happy for him. Like, it was a breakthrough moment for one of the two of us. It happened to be him. And it's funny, he came up to me, and this is something I'll never forget. He came up to me, when we shook hands at the end, gave each other a hug. He just said, "Listen, you're going to go out and win the stroke play in a couple of weeks." And at the time, you don't think much of it, but it kind of stuck in my head a little bit. The New England Am sat in between those.
Right.
And I was almost trying to miss the cut at the New England Am. I was just happy to be there. And I birdied my 17th hole the second day to make the cut on the number. So of course I had to go out and play all 3 rounds, which the 3rd round there at Alpine, something kind of clicked. And I said, okay, if I can get this, if I can translate this into next week, then it's worth it. It'll pay off. And I really took a good mindset going into Montauk, into the stroke play. And then the morning of the tournament, we get down to Montauk. It was blowing 25, right? And that golf course is already narrow enough. And I get down to the driving range, actually go and hit balls with Derek Gaudette. And we're just hitting golf balls, and the wind is so strong back in our face, just dirt is just flowing back in our faces. The range on top there's a lot of dirt there to begin with, and it's just grass and dirt coming back. And I'm just like, I hit maybe 9 golf balls, and I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to go to the first tee. And we get to the first tee, and I'm playing with Bobby Leopold that day. And I was just like, I can't just lay down. Like, I see Bobby and I just want to play. He's a good motivating factor, just because you've seen so much that he's done. And I just flipped my mindset right on the dot. And, in the moment, that was the biggest thing. If I had played with somebody else that day, I probably wouldn't have played that well. But my goal was to go out and try to, beat Bobby that day, and, try to see. I think I played with Harry Dessel as well, who, obviously he's a really, really good player. I played with him both days of the stroke playing, and I think he broke par both days, which is absurd, especially the second day with the wind. So, that's kind of credit to just how good Rhode Island golf is. You see these guys and you want to compete, whether you're mentally ready prior to the round, which was terrible on my part for not being ready, but, to be able to snap back into it, that was kind of a motivating factor, honestly.
So you win the stroke play. That's your second stroke play title. Do you feel like you pretty much have that tournament in the bag if you play your best?
No, and it's funny too, because I don't picture Montauk as being a course that fits my eye very well. It's very narrow. It doesn't really use my length to my advantage. If I were to consider one of my strengths, it's probably my length. You really can't blast it around that place. But I just happen to really stay focused on a game plan at that place and not try to do anything crazy. There's spots out there that you can try to take advantage of it. But it's very risky. I'm assuming you've played there. The first hole may be the hardest tee shot in the state to start on. You have OB left and you have basically no bailout right. You can blast it right, but then the problem is your second shot into that first green is over a pond, and out of bounds is maybe 15 feet left of that green, maybe. So I actually think that the approach there was like to play very conservative but aggressive to spots, and it worked. I mean, I was as surprised as anyone that I was able to compete as well as I did at that place, just because it doesn't fit my eye that well. But I was also playing really, really good golf. Like I said earlier, it kind of, that was the week where it peaked for me. And I think the New England Am was where I found like that last day, I really found something that was clicking. And it just, luckily it translated into that week, and it never really left, which was good.
Yeah, and then you obviously you win the Kirkbride Club Championship for whatever that's worth. You and Tommy are
It's worth a lot.
you and Tommy are trading club championships. Meanwhile, Kylie is just sitting there, just holding on to her parking spot. But
Mhm.
but I guess talk about that, because obviously we're, full disclosure, I'm a Kirkbride member as well, which everyone already knows. But just what does that mean? That the Kirkbride Club Championship is just a club championship in general. What does that mean?
I mean, it means a lot, obviously. I mean, for the club and for myself, like I think more than anything, what makes it even more special now than it probably ever has is just the amount of talent there is. I mean, it really is, like, Kirkbride has turned into a players club, right? I mean, you have guys like, you know, you have a guy like Larry LaFauci, you have a guy like Tom McCormick, Derek Audette, Nick Salvatore, John O'Clair. I mean, you got guys that have all made match play, Pat Healy, those are those guys, especially at their home course, are lethal. So if you can beat them at home, right, that really says a lot, because their advantage of knowing the golf course and everything else is equal to yours. And if I consider that a part of where I can get an edge somewhere else, where I feel like my prep works a little bit better, or I understand where I want to hit the ball, that advantage may be gone at Kirkbride. And to be able to win those matches is not easy. And I say this all the time, but because we're able to beat up on each other so much at Kirkbride, whether it's Ryder Cup qualifiers, the club championship, or just a Saturday match, those are the types of moments that kind of prepare you to win at the state level, national level. So, without a club championship, I don't think you get a stroke play. I don't think you get player of the year. I don't think you get to match play in the state am. Like, those are the places where it pays off. So I think the Kirkbride Club Championship is extremely important, and the membership and how they embrace it is really, really cool too. It's one of those things, it's a tournament where you're only technically playing for a parking spot, right? But it feels bigger than a lot of the other events throughout the year at times, because of the competition you're facing.
And your name on the wall too. I mean, there's not nothing.
Yeah.
So you win that. Obviously you had a great run in the mid-am. Larry LaFauci got his first win there, which was a cool moment for all you guys to kind of celebrate with him. But then most recently, you go on, you win the Gilham Cup and you win the Anderson Cup at Worcester Country Club with Matt Mont. I don't know much about Matt Mont, obviously, but when you go into these kind of best ball tournaments, right? Are you like the rest of us, where you just text your friends and say, "Hey, do you want to play in this?" Or is there a strategy to who you play with, or is there some sort of thought process as to who you're going to play with in these things, or you just, like I said, you just like the rest of us and play your friends? Granted, your friends are very good at golf.
Well, I mean, yeah, Mont's a great player. I mean, I played with him at URI for a year, and he's a great friend, obviously. But, when we get to the tournaments, there's definitely some strategy that goes into it. Like, Matt and I are totally different players. I would say I'm probably more conservative than he is. He's one of those guys, he looks at a 30-footer and I go, "Hey, Mont, we just got to 2-putt this, like, nestle it up there." And he hits it 6 feet by, and you just clench your teeth in anger. But he's also going to make a couple 30-footers. We in the Gilham this year, he had a hole in one, so he definitely complements my game really well. So it's a lot of fun to play with him. But those tournaments, I mean, the approach is always a little bit different. When your partner's out of the hole, it puts a lot more pressure on you, because now you've got to compete. And then on the flip side, if you're both in the hole, it really takes some pressure off for you to go out and make birdies. So, being able to deal with those different scenarios is a lot of fun. I think I learned a lot about my own game playing those 4 balls, because it definitely, it definitely exposes the flaws in your game. and it also exposes some of the things you're really good at that you're maybe not willing to, put yourself out there for in an individual spot because you're not willing to take on the risk. So, I've learned a lot playing with him. Obviously I play the, McCormick with Derek as well, and we play the state football together. And the same thing, like Derek and I have pretty different games, but they complement each other really well. So it's a lot of fun playing those floorball events.
Yeah, especially when you win them. A couple more things, and I have to get to work, believe it or not. This is the state of Rhode Island golf. We have, obviously kids on the rise, like the Max Jacksons of the world. We have a bunch of kids that just turned pro or are turning pro. And you follow Chatfield's run through Q School closely, and Patrick is going to be a pro in short order, and Will Dixon is wrapping up his 2022 season starting today, Wednesday. The state of Rhode Island golf, as you see it is what?
It's really, really good. I mean, I don't want to discount what's been done in the past, because guys like Quigley and Blanchard and the guys that have come through before that have turned pro obviously are really great ambassadors of the game and really, really good players. But I think the difference now is there's 3 levels. There's the junior game, there's the college game, and there's the mid-am game. And I feel like Rhode Island in general has all 3 in a really, really good spot. Now, obviously Patrick doesn't really play events in Rhode Island anymore, and obviously with Davis gone, and obviously some of the restrictions in Wagger and stuff like that kind of took away some of his tournaments here.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have guys like O'Leary. You've got all the college kids in Massachusetts that either float across the border, or we end up playing events with them in some way, shape, or form. The game's in really, really good shape, I feel like. Obviously when you have guys like Harry and Max at the junior level, now into college level, those guys are going to be the hardest to beat, I guess, on the surface. But what I think is really, really cool about Rhode Island is if you look, besides O'Leary's win in 2019, mid-ams have really, really held their ground well around here. And that says a lot about how good the mid-ams are here. I think there's this perception that Rhode Island's a small state, Massachusetts is a small state, but if you go and look at the guys from Mass and Rhode Island and Connecticut, and you look at guys like Palladino, Macario, Parziale, Leopold, Valois, Lukowitz. I mean, I'm forgetting a ton of names. I mean, Blazer. I mean, you just keep going and going and going. The mid-am game is in probably the best spot it's ever been. And that's really where the golf associations thrive the most. So, and that's even more credit now to a guy like Larry LaFauci, who wins the state am, and beats the big guns. So it just tells you too, like, not only are there the traditional names that we've seen for years, but guys like Larry's just getting back into competitive golf. Like, he's going to be dangerous for years to come. You get a guy like, Mike Caparco, who, he's a young kid just kind of getting into competitive golf and how good he is. And like I said, I'm forgetting a ton of names, but the state has a ton of depth. And I think that's probably what means even more to winning player of the year, is like, you had to beat all those guys. So it's just a lot of fun to compete with those guys, and they're all classy. Like I said, I mean, Kevin, I told the first part of the story with Kevin, saying you're going to go win the stroke play. When I was in the final group of the stroke play, he finished maybe 45 minutes before me. He left a note with Bob Ward, says, "Congrats, kid, KB." Left a note with Ward. And after I signed my scorecard, Ward gave me the paper, and I still have it. I mean, it's a really cool thing that we're all rooting for each other. And to your point earlier too about Larry, like, we all hung around to see Larry win. It's a really cool moment, and we do the same for any of those guys. So it really is it's fun to beat each other, but it's also really fun to root for each other. And I think that's what's also helped the state of the game in Rhode Island. I hope it continues for years.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You have you said the juniors and the high school level, and obviously to you guys, and now a little bit into the pros with some of these guys turning pro, which I think is pretty cool as well. Okay, everyone knows you're a big PGA Tour 2K guy. We've wrote numerous stories on you in courses and the World Cup of course design. I know the new video game just came out relatively recently. Your review of PGA Tour 2K23. is what?
I think it's great. I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I was definitely hoping for a little bit more from the designer, but I think what's unique about games in general nowadays is they get a lot of support after they're launched versus, here's a boxed game at, GameStop, take it home and it's the same game for the next 6 months. So I'm hoping that they add some stuff in there. I think that'll probably get the community a little bit more excited. I think the problem right now is, the course designer itself, because it didn't get a huge facelift and a bunch of new stuff. There's not as much enthusiasm from the, I guess you could say the community. So I'm hoping that they add some stuff, but I think what's really, really cool is to be a part of that game when it sold, I think it ended up selling like 2.5 million copies is pretty insane. So I'm definitely hopeful for the, what they add to the game and future updates and stuff.
For people that follow your designs, whether you're putting in local courses in the game, which is really cool. And our stories on that still do page views to this day, believe it or not, because it just comes up in trends, or designing your own courses, which you do as well. For people that follow you from that perspective, what can they expect? Do you have anything coming up in that aspect of the game, or what can people look forward to in that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've actually starting now, I'm getting a lot of requests to port over some of the Rhode Island courses into the game, which is exactly what I plan to do. It's just, it takes some time and I just haven't had the time between work and just kind of the golf season wrapping up. But I'm definitely going to try to port over all the courses that I did in 21 into 23. I think it ended up being almost 20,000 plays, on all the Rhode Island courses, which is pretty, it was unexpected. I think Wannamoisett alone had over 5,000 plays, by the time it was done. So really, really neat. I'm hoping to port all those over. I think as of now, Triggs is over and Rhode Island Country Club, but there's a little bit of a painstaking process to do it. So I just haven't had a chance, but definitely in the next couple of weeks, hopefully work will quiet down around the holidays and I'll make sure to port them over. That way people can play.
All right, and lastly, then I'll let you get out of here. Your winter schedule, are you playing this winter anywhere? Are you down in Florida playing in tournaments? Or I'm really just asking this for myself so I can make note of these things. But are you doing anything in the winter as far as tournament wise, playing in Florida or elsewhere for that matter, that we can follow you on?
Hoping to. One of the hard things about mid-am golf is, you have to basically apply to all these events and just hope that you get in. So I think I've applied for maybe 3 or 4 events. I'm hoping to do, I think the big one to start up will be the Gasparilla in February. I'm hoping to get back into that. I know Larry will definitely be in that just because the state mid-am champ from every state gets an automatic invite. So hopefully you get to see his name down there. I'm hoping to join him. The Azalea, which is in Charleston in March, I applied to that, hoping to get in. And then the one I'm really stretching on, but I'm really hoping to get in, because in the past, Rhode Island Player of the Year has had a really good chance to get in, is the Terracotta at Naples National in April. And that's kind of turned into a, college/junior event with probably only about 10 to 15 mid-ams from around the country. So it's a really, really competitive space for mid-am, but hoping to get in. If I can get into those, I'll definitely play. If not, there may be some local Jacksonville, Florida type events that I'll try to get in. But to be honest with you, it's more about getting stuff in the spring to get ready, just because, the prep work that goes in, it's really hard to prepare for a tournament in February in Rhode Island, obviously. That goes without saying. So we'll see what the schedule dictates, but I'm definitely willing to play in those events. They're all a lot of fun. I mean, anyone who's played in the Gasparilla can tell you how unbelievable that event is. Every mid-am in the country wants to play in it, so that obviously makes it really hard to get into. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you told me about that event. You said it's kind of a crazy atmosphere. So, that's awesome. Obviously, we'll follow you on the scoring. I'll be texting you for scoring links if you get into any of these tournaments. So, but listen, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Congrats on all your success. Not bad for a kid from Lincoln High School. It's pretty good. But thanks again for coming on and for all your support. I always appreciate it. And obviously I'm sure I'll see you around somewhere, but good luck and have a good winter. And again, congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
All right, thanks to Mike Hamilton for taking a few minutes, well, more than a few minutes, to talk with us. Again, a really cool interview, and we'll have that interview up separately, so you don't have to go watch this whole podcast. Anyway, thanks to Mike again for coming on. Thanks to everybody for all your support, and no show next week as it's Thanksgiving. So I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. Obviously, if something crazy happens for some reason, then we'll obviously have an article up on it, or I'll do a quick podcast hit or whatever it might be. But I'm not really expecting anything crazy to happen. But you never know. I learned. Thanks to everyone for all your support. Have a great Thanksgiving with your family and friends, and maybe even get some golfing. You never know. And but stay tuned for all those deals with the pin and also our pro shop and whatever else comes up. So thanks to everybody. Hope you have a great weekend and great Thanksgiving. And we'll talk to you throughout the week on GolfNewsRI.com.